Today we arrived at the medieval cultural capital of Normandy. Known as the City of 100 Spires, Rouen most magnificent steeple rises from the Notre Dame Cathedral, a favorite subject of Claude Monet. Rouen is where Joan of Arc was sentenced to death and where she was burned at the stake. The Grue Luja, or Great Clock, is an impressive 1528 circa-era Renaissance clock. This great clock decorates Rouen's former city hall. The Notre Dame Cathedral in Rouen is a landmark of art history. Claude Monet was known to paint this frilly Gothic facade various times throughout the day. There's been a church on this site for more than 1,000 years. Charlemagne honored it with a visit in the 8th century before the Vikings sacked it 100 years later. The building today was constructed between the 12th and 14th centuries. However, between lightning strikes and world wars, the cathedral has constantly been rebuilding. For centuries, Rouen walked a political tightrope between England and France. During the 100 Years' War, England called Rouen its base. Joan of Arc was burned here in 1431. During World War II, Allied bombers destroyed 50% of Rouen. However, most of the historic core survived, establishing Rouen as a tourist destination. This 2,000-year-old city mixes Gothic architecture, half-timbered houses, and contemporary hustle and bustle like no other place in France. Its cobble-lined streets in Old Town are a delight to wander down. Rouen was a regional capital during Roman times, and France's second largest city during medieval times. During the 9th century, the Normans made Rouen its capital. William the Conqueror even called it home before moving to England. Today we experienced the daily life of a working Norman farm as we enjoyed a leisurely visit to a bucolic homestead. Normandy is renowned for its creamy cheeses and endless apple orchards that produce delicious cider and Calvados, the region's beloved apple brandy. We joined our guide for a scenic drive to Saint-Michel-de-Lacy, a tiny French commune amid vast fertile fields, where these iconic apple products have their roots. Our destination is the Domaine Duclos Faugeray, a beautiful rustic farm whose 18th century buildings are made from stone, mud, and timber. When we exited our motor coach, we were greeted by the border collie Huge. Although she is not a large dog by any means, she was the largest of her litter. A little more reluctant was the border collie Batiste. Batiste has lived a hard life. She was hit by a vehicle recently, and the week prior to our visit, she had a stroke. However, she still wanted to see what was going on as our group toured her farm. The owners, who have been making award-winning cider and other products here for more than 2 decades, invited us to visit the orchard and to watch a lively shepherd dog demonstration. Huge was the star today. Border collies are natural sheepdogs. However, she did receive plenty of training in order to be successful. Huge loves being in charge, and she showed the sheep who was the boss. After her demonstration, Huge came up to each of us in our group for a pat on the head and a job well done. Owners Hervé and Denisa fell in love with this place in 1984, and that's where the adventure began. Following a crush on this magnificent farmhouse, they planted an orchard in the 90s. Since then, they are constantly looking for quality, rigor, and authenticity in each of their products. Their estate aspires to be a warm home that values family, which is reflected in their products. Their orchard contains 24 different varieties of cider apples as well as a few varieties of pears. A flock of sheep graze the grass all year round. Beehives have also been installed to promote pollination in the spring. The farm has a neat arrangement with the locals. For instance, the farm keeps bees for pollination, but a local beekeeper maintains the hives in exchange for the honey. Likewise, someone from town shears their sheep in exchange for the wool. During our visit, we sampled apple cider, Calvados, and its close cousin Pommeau, with a homemade apple tart and Norman cheeses. The apple cider was smooth, but it did have a slight bite. The Pommeau tasted like a caramel apple, and our host referred to it as a child's drink. Finally, the Calvados came in two varieties, a 6-year aged and a 10-year. The 6-year was a very strong drink, and it left you warm inside for several moments. However, the 10-year aged Calvados was very smooth.